you were of the world would love you as its own. But because you are not of the world, but I chose you out of the world, therefore the world hates you. Remember the word that I said to you, a servant is not greater than his master. If they persecuted me, they will also persecute you. If they keep my word, they will also keep yours. If I go on into Matthew 24 and we talk about the signs of the end time that Jesus had talked about, I'm going to go start at Matthew 24, verse 4. It says, Jesus answered, "Be careful that no one misleads you, deceiving you and leading you into error. For many will come in my name, misusing it and appropriating the strength of the name which belongs to me, saying, I am the Christ, the Messiah, the Anointed, and they will mislead many. You will continually hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not frightened, for those signs must take place. But that is not yet the end of the age. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be famines and earthquakes in various places. But all these things are merely the beginning of birth pains, of the intolerable anguish and the time of unprecedented trouble." Verse 9, "Then they will hand you over to endure the tribulation, and will put you to death, and you will be hated by all nations because of my name. And at that time many will be offended and repelled by their association with me, and will fall away from the one whom they should trust, and will betray one another, handing over believers to their persecutors, and will hate one another." So my topic here is persecution. And I don't, when I, scroll around everywhere online, I don't see much about persecution. And I just want to alert to you that persecution is very alive and well today outside of the developing nations and a little bit in the developed nations. So I read this article called by the Gatestone Institute. It's the International Policy Council. And the title is The Ignored Pandemic, 360 Million Christians Persecuted Worldwide. Let me say that again. 360 million Christians persecuted worldwide. Now, we know a lot of times when they give that number, you can double it at least. This is written on February 13th, 2022. When the Taliban took control of Afghanistan, they tried to appear moderate, but there's no sign that Christianity will be anything other than a death sentence. The persecution of Christians in India has intensified as Hindu extremists aim to cleanse the country of their presence and influence. The extremists disregard Indian Christians and other religions, minorities as true Indians, and think the country should be purified of non-Hindus. The COVID-19 pandemic has offered a new weapon to persecutors. In some areas, Christians have been deliberately overlooked in the local distribution of government aid and have been accused of spreading the virus. Now, that reminds me of what happened in Rome when the fires started before the persecution of the Christians in Rome. In Qatar, violence against Christians rose sharply. In Bangladesh, local authorities told Muslim converts to Christianity who, like their Muslim counterparts, sought governmental aid to return to Islam or receive nothing. In the Central African Republic, which was hit hard by the COVID-19 pandemic, Christians were denied government aid and told to convert to Islam if they wanted to eat. Another notable trend concerns the growing number of internally or externally displaced people. 84 million, okay, let me say that again, 84 million is a significant number who are Christians fleeing religious persecution. At least a quarter, through arguably much more, of all hate crimes registered in Europe. Okay, this is the developed nation. And you're talking a quarter, 1/4 of all hate crimes registered in Europe were anti-Christian, representing a 70% increase compared to in 2019. It is telling that European nations suffering the most also happen to have Europe's largest Muslim populations, namely Germany, where anti-Christian hate crimes have more than doubled since 2019. And France, where 2 churches are reportedly attacked every single day, some, as in the Muslim world, with human feces. So there is some stuff going on in the developed nations. In short, the persecution of Christians, is already horrific, has increased by nearly, get this number, 70% over the last 5 years, with no signs of abating. How long will it be before the seemingly irreversible trend metastasizes into those nations currently celebrated for their religious freedom? Question mark. The year 2021 saw the worst persecution of Christians in history, with an average of 16 Christians murdered for their faith every day. Now, we've had a lot of distractions, haven't we? So we don't notice this. Interesting, isn't it, how the enemy works? That observation comes from the World Watch List 2022, recently published by the international humanitarian organization Open Doors. The report each year ranks the top 50 countries where Christians are most persecuted for their faith. The World Watch List uses data from field workers and external experts to quantify and analyze persecution worldwide. According to the World Watch List 2022, covering October 1st, 2020 to September 30th, 2021, over 360 million Christians suffer high levels of persecution and discrimination for their faith. A rise of 20 million from last year. The number represents 1 in 7 Christians worldwide. 1 in 7. This year records the highest levels of persecution since the first list was published 29 years ago. So that's what they're comparing to 29 years ago. For the same reporting period, 5,898 Christians were murdered for their faith, a number representing a 24% increase from 2021, when 4,761 Christians were killed. So you're, adding 1,000 more. Additionally, 6,175 believers were detained without trial, arrested, sentenced, or imprisoned, and 3,829 were abducted. Perhaps even more reflective of the hate for Christianity, 5,110 churches and other Christian buildings, such as schools and monasteries, were attacked and profaned. Crunching these numbers into daily averages, the above statistics mean that every day around the world, more than 16 Christians were murdered for their faith, 27 were illegally arrested and imprisoned by non-Christian authorities or abducted by non-Christian actors, and 14 churches were destroyed or desecrated. We're talking daily. For the first time since these reports were published, Afghanistan, which for years usually ranked the second worst nation after North Korea, shot up to the number 1 spot. Afghanistan is now the most dangerous place in the world to be a Christian. We need to pray for them. Christian men are facing almost certain death if their faith is discovered. Women and girls may escape death, but may be married to young Taliban fighters who want the spoils of war. After women and girls are raped, They are trafficked. These are our Christians, brothers and sisters. The incoming Taliban regime gained access to recordings and reports that helped to identify Christians. They were often detained in order to identify networks of Christians before being killed. Taliban fighters are still actively tracking down Christians from existing intelligence, sometimes going door to door to find them. 10 other nations after Afghanistan received the same designation of extreme persecution. Again, extreme persecution. It means that these places for Christians are only marginally safer. They are North Korea, Somalia, Libya, Yemen, Eritrea, Nigeria, Pakistan, Iran, India, and Saudi Arabia. Do you see a common denominator here? In these countries, Christians face persecution ranging from being harassed, beaten, raped, imprisoned, or slaughtered merely for being identified as a Christian or attending church. Notably, the extreme persecution meted out to Christians in the 9 of these top 11 worst nations comes either from Islamic oppression or takes place in Muslim-majority nations. The situation means that 82% of the absolute worst persecution takes place in the name of Islam. This trend This trend affects the entire list. The persecution that Christians experience in 39 of the 50 nations on the list also comes from either Islamic oppression or occurs in Muslim majority nations. Thank you for listening. I just wanted to share that with you. It's a great article. I just read part of it. I will provide the link for you below about this really, really important and ignored subject. And what gets me is I love the title, The Ignored Pandemic. There are more or just as many people being persecuted, being Christians, as there are problems with the, what going on around the last few years. All right. God bless.